After lunch, Solomon White arranged another truck and sent a truckload of daffodils. The daffodils he sent were all high-quality varieties that grew very lush and green, and according to Charlie's request, every one of them was not flowering. Daffodils look very similar to leeks, even more like leeks when they are not blooming. People in the city themselves are not so clear about plants. In addition, most people have eaten leeks and have seen cut leeks, but have never seen leeks growing in the ground, so it is easy to distinguish leeks from foreign ones. Daffodils get confused. Leek is a vegetable that the people like to see and use. Whether it is stir-frying or boiling soup or making pies and dumplings, it is an indispensable good ingredient, but things like daffodils cannot be eaten. Why can't you eat it? Because daffodils contain narcissus. Narcissus itself is a toxic alkaloid. Charlie heard Elaine say that old lady likes to eat leeks, so he immediately thought of the plant colchicum. He knew that after Mrs. Wilson succeeded in stealing vegetables once, she would definitely steal it again, and she would definitely steal it often. So he asked Solomon White to arrange workers to plant all these colchicum against the corner of the wall. In this way, Mrs. Wilson could grab a lot from outside the iron fence with one hand. It couldn't be easier to steal it. If she steals these daffodils and eats these as leeks, then her fate will be miserable. Although it will not be fatal, it is inevitable to go to the hospital for a few days. Charlie's idea was to let her family eat daffodils and be admitted to the hospital. During the time they were in the hospital, let them turn all the fences into walls and then build a glass house for their vegetable garden. No longer be afraid of someone stealing it. When the truck came to unload the cargo, Mrs. Wilson, who was next door, happened to see it on the terrace on the 3rd floor. When she saw clusters of green, slender leaf plants brought down by the workers from the car, she immediately felt her eyes bright. It turned out to be leeks. And so fresh leeks. She couldn't help thinking of the delicious meal at noon. Because of the vegetables stolen from Charlie's house, this homely meal was very delicious and even felt particularly green and healthy. Seeing that there are so many fresh leeks at Charlie's house now, Mrs. Wilson is naturally ecstatic because she likes eating leeks the most. Moreover, she was displaced during this period of time and suffered so many changes, and she went to the detention center for several days. It has been a long time since she had eaten dumplings filled with chives and eggs. Seeing that so many fresh and good leeks came to Charlie's house at this time, the first thought in her mind was to quickly take a knife and cut 2 to make a dumpling filled with leeks and eggs and enjoy a delicious evening. Now. After 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Mrs. Wilson woke up after a nap. The first thing was to come to the terrace to see how Charlie's leeks were doing. Seeing that Charlie had planted all the leeks on the side of the iron fence, Mrs. Wilson was extremely happy. Isn't this just convenient for her? So she immediately went downstairs. At this time, Noah's family of 4 was sitting in the living room watching TV. Harold brought up the TV in an empty room downstairs. Although it was not as big as the one sold, it was already very good. The old Mrs. Wilson said to Hariah, "Hariah, you go out, buy a box of eggs, and then buy a bag of noodles as well." Hariah hurriedly asked flatly, "Mom, why do you want eggs and noodles?" Mrs. Wilson said, "To enjoy dumplings with leek and egg stuffing at night." Harold said in surprise, "Grandma, make dumplings tonight." "Yes," Mrs. Wilson said with a smile. "Do you like leeks and eggs?" Harold smiled and said, "Oh, I like it so much! I haven't eaten the dumplings with chives and eggs for a long time. When you say that, I am a little drooling." Noah also smiled and said, "Mom, why do you think of eating leek and egg dumplings today? You haven't cooked dumplings for a long time." Mrs. Wilson said, "I'm happy today. I have enough dumplings with chives and eggs tonight." "Great," Noah said with emotion. "I haven't eaten dumplings in some days, so today I'm so greedy." Hariah asked, "Mom, apart from noodles and eggs, don't you want to buy some leeks?" Old Mrs. Wilson smiled proudly. "Charlie's house bought a lot of fresh leeks in the afternoon, and I will go out and cut a few of them back later." Noah said hurriedly, "Mom, then cut a little bit more. By the way, dumplings with leek and pork will do." Wendy said, "You can also bake pies with leek fillings." Okay. Old Mrs. Wilson nodded and smiled. "Then I will cut a little bit more." After 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Mrs. Wilson went out with a kitchen knife. She put the kitchen knife in the bamboo basket and ran all the way to the fence of Charlie's house. Old Mrs. Wilson looked around and saw that there was no one in the yard, She quickly took out the knife, reached into the fence, and cut a large handful of leeks. After cutting this one, she cut 2 more. She thought it was almost enough, but when she thought about it carefully, such a good leek is really rare. If she doesn't cut a little more, she will lose money. So she cut 6 in a row, and the cut leeks couldn't fit in the bamboo basket anymore. Seeing success, Mrs. Wilson hurriedly ran back.